Hello and welcome back. So last week has kind of been insane. A 6-point game from Tage Thompson, a 6-game goal scoring streak for Nikita Kucherov, some excellent performances from Erik Karlsson and Timo Meier, among many other players. A lot to get to in this video, but as always, we begin this video with a look at the upcoming week's schedule. And for week 5, this week is kind of nuts for fantasy. So 11 teams play 4 times this week, 5 teams only play twice. So let's start with the lighter teams. Florida, Chicago, and Anaheim have light weeks. Most of you shouldn't own any Blackhawks or Ducks in general, but definitely not this week as they only play twice. Columbus and Colorado are coming back from Europe and they only play twice this week. If you missed my video on the Global Series, teams coming back from European series like this usually go around 500 or a little bit below 500, usually around 4-5-1 in the next 10 games after they come back. There have been some outliers, but that was the basic channel that a lot of these teams were falling into. So if you're looking at weekly ads, don't try to grab Avalanche players. Wait for that 10-game stretch to be over and for them to start picking it up after that's over. Quickly want to yell at Jared Bednar. I picked up Pavel Francouz thinking he'd play one of those 2 back-to-back games in Finland. I desperately needed a goaltending win and would have gotten a great stat line from Francouz if he had played. But Bednar goes for Georgiev back-to-back games, so thanks for that, Jared. You might have messed my entire week up. And I'm now at risk of losing to the effing River Cats, who are last in my league. So thanks a lot, Jared Bednar. But on to the teams with good schedules. There are 11 teams that play 4 times, but not all 4-game schedules are created equal. Arizona plays 4 times, but they're all on the road doing the East Coast swing, and they play the Red Hot Sabres, the Islanders, the Red Hot New Jersey Devils, and the Rangers on the second night of a back-to-back. So be careful picking up Coyotes. Most of you probably don't do that anyway. The Flames are doing much of the same. They're on Long Island Monday. That could be a goaltending duel. They're in New Jersey on a back-to-back Tuesday. That could be a goal fest if Dan Vladar is in. Then they're at the red-hot Boston Bruins Thursday and home to face Winnipeg on Saturday. Very tough schedule for the Flames despite the 4-game week. So, be careful if you're looking at any of Flames ads for this week. Same thing with the Oilers. The Oilers are doing the East Coast trip as well, but it's the Southeast trip, and that isn't much better. So they're at Washington Monday. That could be a winnable game. They're facing a lot of injuries in Washington, but then back-to-back at Tampa Tuesday. Then they're in Carolina Thursday and in Florida Saturday. I'd look for Stuart Skinner to start one of those back-to-back games, if not more than that, because Jack Campbell is not cutting it yet, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The Islanders actually have a pretty decent week. Monday home against Calgary, then Tuesday at the Garden, second night of a back-to-back. Then they get Arizona coming in on Thursday and Columbus Saturday, so only one of the lighter nights. And they do have a difficult back-to-back early in the week, but some winnable games later on. But they are on Thursday and Saturday, so not exactly ideal for waiver pickups. The 3 best schedules this week are undoubtedly Washington at number 1. They play all the light nights, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and there are some difficult opponents in there, but the Oilers haven't been getting goaltending. The Penguins are winless in 7, and they've been blowing leads left and right. And obviously, the guys like Ovechkin can tee off on, goalies that don't have a lot of confidence, that are giving up a ton of goals late in games. So that could be an interesting matchup to watch. And the Penguins have also been destroying my goaltending strategy. I just wanted to throw that in there really quick. Kind of cranky today, so a lot of goaltending issues. We'll get to that later. But if you can pick up Caps this week, you'll probably get 4 games from them playing no matter what, because they play on all the off nights. So if you pick up a Cap, you'll probably have them in your lineup every game. But who can you target? So let's take a look at it. The Caps are a bit banged up right now. John Carlson is technically able to return Monday night, but it remains to be seen if he'll go for that game. They also have Wilson on IR. Orlov is listed as day-to-day. TJ Oshie's on the IR. Backstrom's on long-term IR. Connor Brown's on IR. So that means there's some guys getting elevated roles that may be able to be had this week on the waiver wire. The best ad this week will probably be Dylan Strome, only 25% owned. He's getting top 6 minutes, PP 1 time as well. Stats aren't eye-popping, 9 points in 13 games, but 5 power play points, so some nice exposure there. And in a week where he'll get 4 games and won't interfere with your starters, you could do a lot worse. Not much shot volume, 1.61 shots per game, 4 hits, 8 blocks, nothing there either. So don't expect a lot of peripheral coverage, but you will get power play exposure and some point totals. Now, the next couple of guys on this list are for banger leagues. And if you're in a league with hits as a category, Faravari is the pickup. So 49 hits so far this year, 3.76 hits per game, and he's third in the league in that category. So if you need that type of hits coverage in a defenseman, you go for Faravari. If you want it in a center, you could look at Nick Dowd, 3% owned, almost as many hits as Faravari. Dowd ranks 11th in the league in hits. You will get a little more offense out of Nick Dowd than you will out of a guy like Garnet Hathaway, who's at 7% ownership with 47 hits. He's tied for 5th in the league in hits. So if you only need hits, and you need it coming from a right winger for whatever reason, Hathaway is your guy. But if you want a little bit more production, Nick Dowd, 3 goals, 2 assists, 20 shots on top of that, and he's less owned. He is a center, so that's a little bit less of a desired position, but these are your hits guys. Faravari, Dowd, and Hathaway. All of them are, well, one's in 11th place, but they're all basically in the top 10 in hits. Most of them should be available in your leagues, and they are definitely going to rack up some hits in a 4-game week, and they play on all the off nights. So if you're looking for deeper plays and you don't need hits, how about Connor Sherry? So third on the team in scoring, 7 points in 13 games, currently getting the garden seat with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov, averaging 18 minutes a night and getting some power play time as well. 4 goals, 3 assists, 1 power play point, 23 shots. But that line assignment is the big thing to think about when trying to add Connor Sherry. He's dual position eligible as well, so that may help you. But again, positional flexibility, not the most important thing when they're playing all the off nights. Now, a lot of people who don't watch the Caps are going to remember Anthony Mantha and see that he scored a goal and an assist last game. But the problem here is he only got 12 minutes of ice time last game, and he's been unownable the previous 5 games with no points, only a sprinkling of shots, and 1 or 2 hits per game. But instead, why not try Mojo? Marcus Johansson, 13 games, 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists, 4 power play points, 25 shots, so over 2 shots per game, and he's getting second line minutes and top power play minutes as well. He's a guy that I would look to if you're in a deeper league and you try to, get some of that offensive production on your roster for this week. In a 4-game week, all the off nights, Johansson probably has the best pedigree in terms of what he's been able to accomplish over his career, as opposed to a guy like Nick Dowd or Dylan Strome. Who, Strome has had a couple seasons where he's gone off and done some nice point totals in the past, but Johansson, much more of a veteran guy. He's in the top 6, and I would look for him as a potential waiver add this week. Now, the next best schedule this week is definitely Minnesota. So they play 4 times, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So 3 of the 4 light nights. And they're doing the California trip, though, for whatever reason, the Sharks game is at home. They're not going into San Jose. That back-to-back at LA and Anaheim is doable since they face the Ducks on the second night. I'd look for Philip Gustafsson to start that second game, but it will still likely be a goal fest as Anaheim is 4th worst in goals against this year. But the LA game could be a goal fest as well. LA ranks 5th worst in goals against, so who knows? And now that I said that, you could probably expect a 1-0 shutout in that game. But regardless, that Sunday game versus the Sharks may be a nice place to mine fantasy value as well. But there are some alarming trends as we'll look at some waiver options. So let's take a look. Now, the top ad this week for Minnesota may not be available in your league, but Joel Eriksson Ek, 55% owned, 11 games, 9 points, including 3 on the power play, 39 shots, ranks him just outside the top 25, and he's averaging just over a hit per game. And we'll come to this in a second, but this line is playing really well right now. Joel Eriksson Ek with Mason Shaw and Matt Boldy. Matt Boldy's owned up right now. Freddie Gaudreau is centering the top line right now. He's only 4% owned. He's on the top line with Zuccarello and Kaprizov. He's 3 position eligible, very rare. So even on that Tuesday night, he may slot into your lineup somewhere depending on who you have because he's got that 3 position eligibility. His stats aren't anything to write home about, but if that line assignment gives you 4 chances for him to pop off with those line mates, I'd take that any day. And then, as I mentioned before, another center who kind of came out of nowhere, He's not playing center right now, but Mason Shaw, 2017 fourth-round draft pick, 52 points in 62 games in Iowa last year. This year he gets called up, and he's been playing with Matt Boldy and Joel Eriksson-Ek on the second line. Through 6 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points, 10 shots, and 2 hits per game. So seems to have found some chemistry with those two. Last week, this line accounted for the top 3 fantasy players on Minnesota, according to Yahoo in category leagues, and Kaprizov was actually 4th. So definitely something to monitor, especially for deeper leagues. Now, previously, I was giving out Kalen Addison, but he's been non-existent. Only 1 point in his last 7 games, no shots or hits or anything else to make him ownable. So maybe that was just an early season sample size anomaly. He may be still getting some power play time, but it's just not happening for him the last couple weeks or so. And then as for goaltending at the bottom, you see that both of these guys have been pretty bad. One of them, obviously Fleury, is 95% owned. He's got an .888, which is really bad, and a 3.41 goals against, but he does have all 5 of Minnesota's wins. This is probably the reason that Minnesota is off to a middling 5-5-1 start. They're 6th worst in goals against this year and a -10 goal differential, so they aren't scoring their way out of their problems. They're likely adjusting to life without Kevin Fiala and then life with those 2 massive buyouts of Suter and Parise that are finally starting to kick in and affect the team on the ice. As I said, Fleury has all 5 wins, but both goalies will likely be used this week. It's just a matter of whether or not you trust them to tighten it up this week. That Seattle game may be lower scoring, but the other 3 look to be goal fests on paper. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out, but not what you want to see if you took a high pick on Marc-Andre Fleury in the draft. Now, the next best schedule is Boston. 4 games, 2 of them on light nights, Monday and Sunday. Boston is absolutely on fire. They were 10-1 until they lost last night in Toronto, but they sit comfortably atop the Atlantic Division, 5 points ahead of second place, and they face some decent teams, but 3 of the 4 games are at home, and the back-to-back does feature an away game at Buffalo, but the travel isn't terrible. They do come home to face Vancouver waiting for them at TD Garden on Sunday, and that's a pretty winnable game on the second night of a back-to-back, all things considered. The only concern is this: can a team that started this hot stay this hot for this upcoming week? Usually we would expect a little bit of regression to the mean this week, but that doesn't necessarily impact fantasy value. So first things first, let's start with a shout out. In the preseason, I was advising drafting Charlie McAvoy, who was going extremely late due to injury. He's set to come back any day now. I got him 144th in the draft, 12th round, and he's about to come back this week, so I feel pretty great about the value of drafting him there. But if you did that, I also suggested you grab Hampus Lindholm for the time being until McAvoy came back, as he was going to be the power play quarterback. And if you did that, you got rewarded this past week. So Lindholm last week, 3 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points, 1 power play point, 7 shots, 4 hits, 5 blocks, and he was averaging 25 minutes a night. I would hold on to him even when McAvoy comes back, just in case McAvoy doesn't start hot and they stick with Lindholm on power play 1, or just hold on to him because the Bruins are a great team and Lindholm has been a big reason for that thus far. He is 85% owned, so let's see if we can find somebody with a little bit lower ownership for your waiver wire pickups this week. Again, let's start with Jake DeBrusk. I've been mentioning him every week for his shot volume, 4 shots per game through the season thus far, 9 points in 11 games, top line exposure, and some hits as well. He's dual position, left wing, right wing eligible, and he's at 54% ownership. So in shallow leagues, you definitely want to go grab him, if not for anything else other than that 44 shots, that 4 shot per game shot volume. Now, if you need hits, you should probably grab one of the caps that I mentioned earlier, because 3 of them are in the top 10. But if you want a little more offense and some blocks too, take a look at Connor Clifton. I've been mentioning him in a couple of the other weekly videos. 38 hits, 20 blocks, 5 assists to boot, and 23 shots. So he may see a little less ice time if McAvoy comes back. Something to monitor this week, but he's a specialty tool, and if you need hits and blocks, he's likely going to get those for you. Deeper league plays, Nick Foligno, dual position eligible, 7 points in 12 games. A nice little bounce back for him, 27 hits on top of that, and he's probably extra ornery after the Bruins signed Mitchell Miller. You saw his interview kind of condemning that choice, so maybe a few more hits this week if he's a little pissed off about that. Charlie Coyle, 4% owned, had a nice week, 2 goals in 3 games, 5 goals on the season. If you're looking for a Bruins center, I'd probably suggest Krejci over Coyle. Krejci has 8 points in 9 games, 4 on the power play. He's usually on PP1. But if you'd prefer goals, then stick with Coyle because he has 5 and Krejci only has 2 and is definitely more assist heavy. Krejci is also 27% owned, so he may not be available for you, whereas Coyle might be at only 4% owned. There are some decent deeper options like AJ Greer with 3 goals, 3 assists in 10 games, Pavel Zacha, 7 points in 12. But let me turn to maybe the biggest play at this point of the season. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the Bruins goaltenders. Linus Ullmark, currently ranked 18th overall in category leagues, leads the league with 8 wins on the season, a .929 save percentage, and a .216 goals against, and a shutout in 10 games. So excellent start for Linus Ullmark. And then if you see Jeremy Swayman with much worse stats, but he does have 2 wins on the year, and he's currently on the IR. He was seen with his knee taped up. He's considered week to week. But if somebody in your league has Swayman, and if you can grab him off the waiver wire, that's even better. Stash him right now. That would be the time to do so. Last year, Ullmark and Swayman split the starts at 41 apiece, and this year Ullmark has earned the start volume that he's seen in the beginning of the season, but you'd expect that to level out over the next few months and or for the rest of the season, which means you could potentially buy low on Swayman right now and expect a higher start share going forward. But the key here is Boston's defense. So 6th in the league in goals against, 7th in expected goals against, and the best goal differential in the league with a +20. So they're giving their goalies a ton of run support. They're still playing the kind of defense they did under Bruce Cassidy, and you may be able to take advantage of this. Also worth mentioning, Bruce Cassidy's current team, the Golden Knights, ranks 6th in the league in goals against. So the man has a defensive formula that works, and if you have Vegas goaltenders, the play right now is to handcuff them together. If you have Ullmark, the play probably is to handcuff these 2 guys together. But obviously Swayman on the IR, you're probably going to need somebody in the meantime. But this could be a nice little play for you if you're struggling like I am with goaltending. I know Toe Dragons isn't going to give me Swayman, but if you're in a different league and the guy doesn't know what he's got in Swayman, the numbers look really bad right now. You could float a low ball trade offer and try to pick him up because this is a really good team that you do want exposure to. Now, the Week 5 Sunday plays. If your week comes down to the wire and you need those guys that play Sunday or those late Saturday night ads for Sunday to help you win your week, there's good news. There's 6 games this upcoming Sunday to choose from. Now, the Coyotes have their work cut out for them. They're at the Rock against the Devils on Saturday night. Then, pretty easy travel day to MSG on Sunday, but 2 very difficult games. Still not a great matchup on the second night of a back-to-back. And I've gone over both of those teams in previous weeks. Not much has changed in terms of the fantasy performers. So if you're curious about one of those 2 teams' waiver guys, maybe check out last week's video. Boston, I just mentioned them. They have a good matchup, but they're on the second night of a back-to-back with travel involved, coming home from Buffalo, facing the Canucks. Still probably a good matchup, but we just covered the Bruins ad, so I'm not going to go too much into that. The Dallas-Philly game has the makings of a goaltending duel, with Ottinger, currently the top goalie in fantasy, ranked 5th overall, facing Carter Hart, the 6th best fantasy goalie, right now 22nd overall in category leagues. So Dallas has the best goals against in the league, tied with Vegas and Winnipeg, but Philly is 1 goal behind them with in 4th place. So very good defensive / goaltending teams. Obviously, Carter Hart and Jake Ottinger both in the top 5 goals saved above expected right now. That would signal me to stay away from adding forwards or D from either of these 2 teams. But yeah, if you're desperate, you could potentially pick up a hits guy or a blocks guy for one of these 2 teams, as it's likely to be a defensive battle. But if you do want the waiver ads for Sunday, I would look at that San Jose, Minnesota game. We already covered the Minnesota ads, so if you've been watching every week, you know most of the Sharks guys to own. But here are some of these guys again. Luke Cunnin, 10% owned, left wing, right wing eligible, 2 goals, 4 assists, 3 power play points, 31 shots and 32 hits, 16 blocks. So a lot of peripheral coverage there. And he was, they've played a lot of games. I think they've played 14 games at this point, but still getting it done. He's still relatively unowned at 10%. Logan Couture at 28%. He's a strict center. 4 goals, 4 assists, 3 on the power play, 28 shots, 19 hits, 10 blocks. But then the newcomer, Nico Sturm, only 3% owned, but 5 goals. His shooting percentage is currently 27%, so he's currently got a hot stick. I wouldn't expect that to continue, but if you monitor the week and he keeps this up, then you could take a flyer on him for Sunday. You could do a little bit worse than that. James Reimer is still playing pretty well in net, but I just don't like that matchup against Minnesota's offense, although Minnesota hasn't necessarily been lighting it up either, but something to monitor if you're looking for your Sunday ads. Now, as we take a look back at last week's studs, a lot of guys went off, and we're mainly going to cover guys who may actually be somewhat available on the waiver wire for you. But a quick shout out to guys like Jason Robertson, 4 goals, 4 assists, 5 power play points, 19 shots in 3 games. It's insane. Kucherov back on a 6-game goal scoring streak, 3 goals, 5 assists last week. Timo Meier is elite despite the Sharks' woes. So 4 goals, 2 assists, 2 power play points, 21 shots. He leads the league in shots. Obviously, Matthews, a 4-goal week. McDavid went off with 7 points in 3 games. But let's take a look at some of the waiver guys. Jamie Benn, I don't know what to say. This kind of completely came out of left field for me. I'm up against the last place Portland Rivercats in my THHL league, and he's keeping up with me offensively mainly because of Jamie Benn and that hat-trick performance yesterday. So last week, Jamie Benn, 7 points, 5 on the power play, 16 shots, so averaging over 5 per game. I really don't know where this came from. He started slow, no points in his first 4 games, only 1 shot per game. Then he started turning it on a bit and went off last week. So congratulations if you own Jamie Benn. He's dual center left wing eligible, 29% owned. The next guy is definitely not ownable anymore, but you'll remember I talked about him this time last week as a waiver ad, and when I did, his ownership was 65%. 27 hours later, he had a 6-point game, a hat trick, and he's now basically owned up in almost every league. But a great week nonetheless, and he's continuing that shot volume, which gives him that nice floor for his fantasy file. He's now at 85% owned. You're probably not going to get him, but a nice week last week, 4 goals, 5 assists, 3 power play points, and 17 shots. Tage Thompson. And then don't say I didn't warn you, but the Devils are on a 7-game winning streak. I was high on them in the preseason. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league, ranking number 1 in expected goals against, 7th in total goals against, 4th in goal differential, averaging 3.6 goals per game and getting contributions from up and down the lineup. Obviously, Jesper Bratt is going off. He's got 17 points in 12 games. Jack Hughes had a nice week last week, 1 goal, 5 assists, 2 power play points, and 21 shots, but he's also pretty much owned up. If you want exposure to the Devils, how about Miles Wood, 3% owned, 7 points in his last 4 games, including 4 goals, 21 shots on top of that. So a very nice week for the Devils and for Miles Wood. If you watched last week, I also gave out Lawson Krause as a power play option on Arizona. And if you picked him up, he had a nice week for you. So 3 goals, 2 on the power play, 13 shots, 13 hits. That's 3.25 per game for both of those. They do have a light week this week, so only 2 games, but they do play Sunday, and he could be a last-minute Sunday option for you if you need that going into the last day of the week. Again, if you've been watching these weekly update videos, I've been giving out Nino Niederreiter pretty much every single week. It started out as a 4-game week on week 1, but he's still in the top 6. He's getting power play time. He's scoring 2 goals, 1 assist in 3 games last week. But look at that shot volume as well. 10 shots, 15 hits, 5 hits per game, something that I didn't necessarily expect from Niederreiter. And normally I've been covering goalies separate, but let's cover them here. So Martin Jones with Grubauer hurt, taking the number 1 job, 2 games, 2 wins, 1 shutout, 966 save percentage. And in 10 games this year, 2.3 goals saved above expected, a 2.61 goals against, and a 901 save percentage. And he's likely available in your waiver wire at 17% ownership. He's probably the only starter that's still left on your wire, and obviously he's not a starter if Grubauer comes back, but he's having a good week, and I haven't seen any indication that Grubauer is imminently returning, so maybe take a shot on Martin Jones. Seattle is a pretty good defensive team on top of that. And how about Scott Wedgwood? He came in when Ottinger got hurt against the Rangers last week, didn't win that one, but went on a tear after that. So 3 wins, 2 goals against, .935 save percentage, and that is interesting for this reason. So Dallas is number 1 in goals against this league, in the league this year, but 18th in expected goals against. So Ottinger currently has 10.1 goals saved above expected and ranks 3rd in the league in that category. So for Wedgwood to come in and play as well as Ottinger is very impressive. I wouldn't necessarily recommend him long-term with Ottinger coming back, but for a daily stream, he's been proven to be a really good option if you need that. Now, as we switch to pickups by category, in case you need something specific, this will also give us a look at some trends, including some guys we've mentioned already. So for goals production, if you watched last week's video, this is exactly what I said about Victor Olofsson. Quote, Victor Olofsson, only 12% owned, has two goal games, one against Ottawa, one against Vancouver, hasn't gotten anything on the power play yet, so maybe a buy low opportunity if he can start to score some power play goals, especially for points leagues with power play goal weighting. End quote. So if you listened to that and picked him up, he had yet another 2-goal game against Pittsburgh, followed that up with a goal against Carolina, now has 9 goals on the year, ranking him 4th in the league. So that definitely helped you out if you did grab Victor Olofsson. And I previously mentioned Gabe Vilardi. He's continued his hot start. He's tied with Olofsson with 9 goals as well, but getting more owned up by the day at 72%. So Olofsson went from 12% to 34% in 1 week. So, when I give you these guys, you got to jump on them immediately if you want that category coverage. These guys are starting to get owned up. People start to catch on a little bit later. But we're, seemingly ahead of the game on this channel. So, take that for what you will. I hate to keep doing this, but again, if you watched my early season player trends video, I mentioned Andrei Kuzmenko, and I said this, end quote. Another guy I mentioned in the preseason was Kuzmenko. He was my top rookie target this year, mainly for his power play 1 assignment and the fact that he was an older rookie coming over from the KHL. This year at the time, 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in 10 games, 3 power play points, 2 power play goals, 29 shots, yada, yada, yada. That video came out on Thursday, about 2 hours before the games on Thursday night. So if somehow you grabbed him then, you benefited from his 3-goal, 1-assist game that night against the Anaheim Ducks, and he added another goal on Saturday on the power play as well. I'm not a wizard, guys. I just show you the data, and if you can see that data before everybody else, you can jump on these trends and boost your stats every week. Now, in that same video, I mentioned Jonathan Toews and his 6 goals, but also his 31.6% shooting percentage, and mentioned him as a case for regression. And he hasn't regressed yet. He added another goal since then. He's got 7 on the year now, but I would look for him to start slowing down a little bit. And they do have a light week this week, so maybe it starts this week. But those are 3 guys that are relatively low ownership that are scoring goals right now. In terms of shots, there are a few names here that you keep seeing over and over. Bjorkstrand, 3.53 shots per game. Trevor Moore, 3.28 shots per game. But on a per game basis, there have been some guys getting it done, as you can see on the left. So Zach Hyman off to a great start. I mentioned him as well in the early season player trends video. He's averaging almost 4 shots a night. Jake DeBrusk has come down from his 5 shot per game to 4 shots per game, likely caused by Marchand's return and maybe a dip in ice time. But he's still shooting a lot and he's still playing really well. Then there's Ricard Raquel at 3.66 shots per game and only 11% shooting, so maybe some more goals will follow Ricard Raquel, especially if they can start winning, getting a better feeling in the locker room and whatnot. They're on a 7-game losing streak, so that probably isn't helping his goal totals. And then we mentioned Eriksson Ek when we were talking about the Wild earlier. He's getting a lot of shot volume as well, and a lot of people were going out and grabbing Gustav Forsling when Ekblad went down, and that has paid off, at least in terms of shot volume, averaging 3.41 shots per game, but also 7 points in 12 games for Forsling, so really nice there. Ekblad is slated to come back within the next week or so, so that's something to keep an eye on. Now, as we turn to power play, obviously a lot of guys in the top 25 are owned up. The only outliers are Kubalik at 73%, and Travis Konechny, who has 6 power play points on the year, averaging 0.54 power play points per game, and he has 12 points in 11 games overall. So a decent fantasy option no matter what you need. And then I just mentioned Jamie Benn before that, but the hat trick game and the 5 power play points last week vaulted him into the top 20 power play point per game leaders. He's got 0.58 power play points per game on the season, and he's only 30% owned. Again, dual position eligible, center, left wing. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. He's definitely hot right now. So if you want an early week play, maybe Jamie Benn is a guy that can do something for you. If you're in a deeper league and you're looking for a play, Casey Middlestat, only 9% owned, getting a power play point every other game. Same thing for Matias Michelli in Arizona. No goals on the year, 7 assists, 5 of them on the power play. If you watch Michelli play, you can kind of see the skill level, but it's hard to reconcile that skill with only 4 shots on goal on the year, 3 hits on the year, 3 blocks. So basically with him, you're only getting power play and assists. But if that's what you need, then he's a guy that's pretty much available in every league at 0% ownership. Andre Burakovsky, 43% owned, 0.46 power play points per game. Still very relevant on the power play. I dropped him from my team because Laine came back from injury a little bit early, but still a good option for most leagues. He's just probably owned up in some of the deeper leagues. But just quickly wanted to shout out Fabian Zetterlund for New Jersey, 0% owned. That power play points per 60 is a result of his 4-on-3 overtime power play game-winning goal in Calgary last night. In 7 games this year, Zetterlund has 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points, +5, and he has that power play goal that was also a game winner and 23 shots as well, so over 3 shots per game. So he'll get you shot volume and some goal scoring. He saw some power play time as a result of his good play, and the Devils' power play hasn't been great. They only have 6 power play goals in 12 games. They're 8th worst in the league in that category. They're 20th in terms of power play percentage at 20%, and they may be looking for some other options to help that, and perhaps Zetterlund gets a look. So just a really, really deep play that I wanted to mention. He's been getting it done for New Jersey on that West Coast trip they were just on. In terms of assists, most of the guys in the top 25 are owned up. The highlighted players, Barzal has 11 assists in 12 games, and he's snake bitten. I mentioned him in the early season trends video. Expect him to start scoring some goals pretty soon. He had a number of chances against Detroit the other I guess it was a day game, not a night game. But yeah, I covered him in that early season players trends video. He's got, I think, above 3 expected goals thus far, probably more than that now with all the chances he had against Detroit, and he has no goals on the year. So I would definitely pick him up in a shallow league, 61% owned. And he's almost a point per game guy, and the goals will start coming soon for Matt Barzal. Troy Terry, you probably own him for goal coverage, but he is racking up the assists this year as well, albeit at 80% ownership. He's the most ownable Duck right now with, 5 goals, 11 assists. So that's a really decent point coverage for him, 16 points in 12 games, but again, 80% ownership, he's probably not there for you. Josh Morrissey, 64% owned, 10 apples in 11 games. Very good for a defenseman if you need that. If you need a deeper league play for assists, there are a few that we just covered. Michelli is one of them. But how about Vinny Hinostroza? 0% owned, 6 games, 5 assists in only 13 minutes of ice time. Not bad for a deep league play. And then the best option here might be Daniel Sprong. He's been turning it on lately, 7 points in 7 games this year, 5 of them assists, 1 power play goal, 2 power play assists, 2 shots per game, dual position eligible, and only 1% owned. So probably someone to watch as he's been getting it done for Seattle, and they need guys like him to step up and score. He's probably available in almost every league, so if you're desperate for a dual position eligible winger, he's definitely a point per game winger that's getting it done right now. In terms of hits, just like last week, what you see here highlighted are the guys who may be on your wire and who also play 4 times this week. So no need in diving into hits per game or special targets. If you need a specialty hits guy this week, these are your guys. Cal Clutterbuck climbed to the top of the league. Matt Martin not far behind, and JG Pageau is also hitting. All of those guys have 4 games this week. I also mentioned the 3 Washington Capitals on the list earlier. You also have Ryan Reeves and Sammy Blais from the Rangers, as well as Liam O'Brien. He's a Coyote. He also plays Sunday. If you need an extra hits guy, he's pretty much, not owned at all, 1% ownership. So he's a guy with 39 hits on the year in 11 games, almost 4 hits per game. And if you need that Sunday hits coverage, that's probably the guy to go to. Now, for potential goalie ads this week, the only starter available, as we mentioned before, is probably Martin Jones. He had a good week last week, and as we saw earlier, 3 games this week: Nashville, Minnesota, and Winnipeg. And if you want a guy who's probably going to get you 3 starts this week, he's your only option. Otherwise, you're going to need to monitor the games that are back-to-back and see who's available. So Dan Vladar will likely get one of the 2 starts against either the Isles or the Devils. And I don't like the matchup for either of those games, as the Devils are 8th in the league and the Isles are 10th in the league in goals for. So not going to recommend him this week, but if you're a risk taker, go right ahead. The next best guy, Antti Raanta, will probably get a start either Wednesday at Florida or Thursday home against Edmonton. Not great matchups here either, but Raanta is much more capable, and Carolina is 2nd in the league in expected goals against this year, so a good defensive team that will help you with this stream. Now, in Edmonton, I never understood the Jack Campbell signing. I thought there were a bunch of better options on the free agent market, but that's the way that they went. And so far, Campbell in 8 games has a 4.2 goals against and an .874 save percentage. So compare that to Stuart Skinner and tell me which of those 2 guys you'd rather own right now. Edmonton is in Washington Monday and Tampa Tuesday. Again, awful matchups on the road, but Skinner gives them the best chance to win. 4 starts, 2 wins, 2.1 goals against, and a .944 save percentage is excellent. So if he's there on your wire, you could potentially look at him. He might actually get some of the starter minutes this week just because of how much Campbell is struggling, but he'll definitely at least get 1 start this week in those back-to-back games. But the best stream this week, and I'm calling it right now, Semyon Varlamov on Tuesday against the Rangers. So the Isles host the Flames on Monday night. I'd imagine it'll be Sorokin in net for that one against Markstrom. Sorokin already faced the Rangers this year and was absolutely dominant, pitched a shutout, 41 saves. Varlamov's last outing against the Rangers wasn't great, 6 goals on 23 shots. But if you look at the last 2 years, Varlamov has shut out the Rangers 5 out of 9 games that he's faced them dating back to January 2021. And in that span, a .936 save percentage and a 6-3 record. On top of that, the Rangers are 7th in the league in shots, but 3rd in the league in goals below expected with negative -8.65, meaning they're getting a ton of chances and they're just not finishing. They had 41 shots on Sorokin in their last meeting and were shut out. And I do hope I'm jinxing the Islanders and Varlamov right now because I'm a Rangers fan, so I obviously want them to lose. But by pointing all of this out, it could be a good fantasy streaming option for you if I didn't actually jinx it. Now, the last option I'll give you, a former Islander, Thomas Greiss. The Blues play back-to-back at Boston Monday and at Philly Tuesday. I'd imagine they'll go with Binnington against Boston and give the tighter defensive game to Greiss. But who knows? Because Binnington's been struggling. Maybe they give him the back-to-back, the second night of the back-to-back. But if Greiss is playing the Bruins, I don't like that ad. But if Greiss is playing Philly, I do like that ad. He's got a .915 save percentage. He's just not getting the run support when he's in net. But it's, again, it's a gut call. You have to try to see who's starting on Monday. And then, if Binnington starts Monday, maybe grab Greiss for the Tuesday start. So in my matchup with the last place Portland Rivercats, who picked up Vasilevsky in the first round in back-to-back years, who I've featured in videos on this channel as an example of what not to do, I've been getting a dose of karma. So I mentioned earlier that Jamie Benn and his dumbass hat trick Saturday night screwed me over. And what it did more specifically was tie us in goals, and his 16 shots last week helped keep the Rivercats ahead in that category as well. He has Matt Tkachuk and William Nylander tonight. I don't have any shooters outside of Trocheck, so he may take that category, and I need to hope for a few goals, maybe even a few assists or power play points could tie those categories, but it really does come down to goaltending. Now, I mentioned in the Fantasy Puck Save My Season video that I was going to do a tandem of Jari and DeSmith, and that video came out on October 18th, and since then, they got 2 wins against LA and Columbus, and then they went on a 7-game losing streak, giving up 37 goals since I picked up DeSmith. So all video, I've been telling you about all the good calls I've been giving out, but this was not one of them, and I got to admit defeat when I'm wrong. So I do like the strategy in general. I do believe in Pittsburgh in the long term, but for whatever reason, they're blowing leads right now, and they're ruining my goaltending every week. So then I added Pavel Francouz on Saturday, thinking that he'd get one of those 2 back-to-back games, and I knew I only needed 1 good game from a goalie this week to tie wins and stay in it. But Bednar started Georgiev in both of those games for some stupid reason. The silver lining here is that Jordan Binnington was waived by Sterling Slapshots after an awful 3-game stretch. I don't expect this to happen in most leagues, but if he's going to drop a bona fide starter on a good team to the waiver wire, I'll take a shot on him. My goaltending can't get much worse. So now I'm running with Jari, Binnington, and Spencer Knight. I do like that on paper, but who the hell knows at this point. And my week comes down to Spencer Knight versus the Anaheim Ducks tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. But at this point, across 4 leagues, I'm 11-1, and I'm ahead in 3 of my 4 matchups this week. One of those is pretty close outside of this one right here. So at the end of this, I could either be 13-3 or 15-1 after tonight. We'll have to wait and see. But that level of success is what you can achieve with the data draft method and following this channel for weekly updates and trends. If you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you for sticking with it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions about your team or any things that are coming up that you want some advice on. And I will see you in the next video.